Miami Dolphins, legendary, historic day, historic win. Saints fans are happy as hell after the way their game ended, and this game ended as well, as the Dolphins drop a NFL record 70 points on the Denver Broncos. They plant the second most yards ever in an NFL game. They score 10 touchdowns in this football game. And this game is loaded with numbers, right? I'm going to give you all the numbers. The way that the Dolphins won really isn't mysterious, but I want to talk a little bit about Sean Payton as well and really how things are kind of shaping out for him now that this has happened in week 3 of NFL season. So the Dolphins scored the second most points ever in an NFL game. They need at the end to be a class act. I got to give my hats off to Mike McDaniel. He was a Broncos ball boy back in the day. We've seen that meme kind of circulating around. So he had the respect. He was a class act. You see, Sean Payton was a class act at midfield as well. He said, "Good job, man." Like, Sean Payton knows that was a very well executed game from the Dolphins, clearly not by his Denver Broncos. Second most yards ever in an NFL game, one of just 4 70-plus point games in NFL history. It's the biggest win in 57 years by 50 points. Only the 1940 Bears and the 1966 Washington team, I love how they say that, more points in a single game. We've never had a final score of 7-20. The Dolphins won for the 13th time in their last 15 games at home, which is their best 15-game stretch, going back to October 7th of 01 to December 15th of 02 when they went 13-2 in that stretch as well. Here's another interesting one. They're now 11-1 in games that two starts against teams with a head coach that won a Super Bowl, including 10 of those wins in a row. That is the longest streak in the NFL right now. And the Dolphins were clearly wheeling and dealing with 4 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill had a couple. They scored 10 touchdowns in a football game. 7 touchdowns by running backs in total, I believe. 5 rushing touchdowns, 5 passing touchdowns. Tua was 16 of 16, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, perfect passer rating in the first half. Van was absolutely getting blasted on social media. People are already calling for his job, but I kind of don't blame him. When you give something up like this, like, you're probably on a 3-4 game pitch count, I feel like, at this point when you give up points like that. The third most ever passing yards without an incompletion at the half, talking about Tua. The second most completions without an incompletion in a half as well. Literally everything went right for this football team, right? Mike White threw a touchdown to Robbie Chosen. No one even cared about the kick return by Denver in this game because it was so out of reach for the Miami Dolphins. And they did all this without Jalen Waddle. I'm not going to say if they had Jalen Waddle, they would have scored 100 points, but I think we're definitely sitting here today on the show talking about the Miami Dolphins, having the Miami Dolphins having points ever in a game. Now, maybe Mike McDaniel still would have nailed it, right? Because he got in the field goal range. He had the chance to go upwards in the record books. He's like, no, I'm going to take the foot off the gas. It's clearly been a tough day, but my boys over in Denver, they already got blown out 42-6 on the NCAA level. I've already done it to them 70-20. Let me not just put the cherry on the top and take or get close to the total record for most points ever scored in an NFL game by a team. And Sean Payton was just straight up embarrassed, right? I mean, literally at a loss for words, and embarrassed is what he said in the press conference. And he's even getting chippy with some of the reporters. He's like, "What's the question?" I'm like, there's that vintage Sean Payton I've known from those New Orleans days. Like, Sean Payton can be very, very brash, very straightforward, very blunt. I mean, just sometimes downright rude. He can be very upfront with you about certain topics. And when you get 70 dropped on your head and you lose him by 50, probably not going to be a good mood at the post-game presser. I know none of us would if we would have been in Sean Payton's shoes. But I just got to know, why were there starters in the game when you're down 50? That's that Sean Payton stuff right there. Why are your starters in the game when you're down 50 in this football game? You're getting the doors blasted off of you. You really think that anybody wanted to see Russell Wilson out there realistically probably after it was 50-20? And I get it, you don't give up, right? We've seen comebacks in the NFL. We've seen Sean Payton do it. We just saw the Packers do it over the weekend. Like, when momentum swings, and sometimes it's not a matter of if but when, but sometimes it can be in the realm of if, because you have to make it happen. Like, what is actually going to happen if that moment presents itself? It never did in this game, so why were your starters, Sean Payton? You're also looking very questionable as well. You're blasting Nathaniel Hackett, absolutely rigging him, saying it's the worst coaching job maybe ever. And you go out here and you're 0-3. You have a 50-point loss on your record. You have a 70-point defensive outing on your head coaching record in Denver. You blow an 18-point lead at home to the Washington Commanders, who have a good offense this year, but let's be real, you're a better team than them. And I think now I'm realizing that I had way more put into the Denver Broncos than I ever should have, because Sean Payton is now 0-2 at home and has a 50-point loss on his record. And in a way, I feel bad for Sean Payton, right? You give up a first-round pick for this guy to get traded to a team to where the former ball boy literally beat you by 50. And I know that's kind of a stretch, right? But that's the narrative, right? That's the headliner. That's what the Broncos are looking at this point in the NFL season. I mean, it's so bad right now in Denver. You've got Denver fans saying like, tank for Caleb. We'll go try to find, Bo Nix, whatever. I mean, they want to lose so badly at this point. And you got to look at Vance Joseph. Absolutely horrible outing. Devon Achane, 240 rushing yards. Tyreek Hill? He's Tyreek Hill. I think it could have gotten ugly way earlier, way faster if Jalen Waddle actually would have played. They let the Dolphins set every possible record in the NFL books. Most points allowed by a team since 1966. You lose to a really average to really bad Raiders team, if I'm being honest. Cortland Sutton fumbles twice in this game. He drops a touchdown. I mean, it was just hideous for the Denver Broncos in this game from start to finish. And I love to see this from Tua. I will say this about Tua's outing. He did it last year against the Ravens. He did it this year against the Chargers. Clearly a shit defense. He does it in this game against the Broncos. Clearly a shittier defense. But Tua looks great. He looks healthy. He looks bigger. The arm looks better. He looks fearless, confident. Like, Chad Ochocinco said it on Nightcap with Unc and Ocho. Shout out to that on Club Shay Shay, the volume by the volume swerves by Colin Cowherd. If you're looking for a great recap of Monday night, Thursday night, Sunday night football, Nightcap with Shannon Sharp and Chad Ochocinco, aka Unc and Ocho is absolutely great. But Ocho said, when you lose confidence as a player, it's a hell of a thing. Confidence can take you so far. I was even thinking it earlier today. I would almost be willing to say a confident person with average skills is better with a person that has elite skills but average confidence, because confidence will take you to the point of doing things that you really thought you could never do, or really busting through to that next level. And I think that's what we're seeing from Tua. And maybe you want to discount it, right? Oh, he's got Tyreek and he's got Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. Okay, you pissed because they surrounded him with speed? I mean, we can only do so much to take away from what a team actually has with them. And Mike McDaniel as well. Again, another early coach of the year candidate with what he's doing with Miami. Like, I really didn't think he was going to be like this. Kind of hit me with the Joe Burrow effect. Like, okay, he's coming in. He's got this hype. But, like, is he actually going to perform? And maybe you don't like the comp to Joe Burrow, but just kind of like what it reminded me of as I thought back to it in a moment of sports. Mike McDaniel's putting on a masterclass with Tua T at the helm. We know Tua would have been a number one overall pick if he would have been healthy. I've always been a fan of Tua, always been a fan of Jalen Hurts. I got a lot of respect for the Alabama quarterbacks, but I want to see Tua do it against a Bills defense, against a Jets defense, against a healthy Ravens defense, against a Niners defense. Like, I want to see him do it against the more reputable teams, because we saw last year passer rating, touchdowns, yards per game, completion percentage. It fell when he went up against better teams. I do believe that Tua can take that leap to do it against elite defenses. I'm always going to get hype about what he does against any team, but you got to take it into context here. Chargers, bad defense. Like, we've already talked about Brandon Staley on the show enough. Vance Joseph should arguably be fired. I love that he did it against the Patriots. That's the one positive out of the last three awesome games that he's had. And again, I'm not taking anything away from Tua. Big fan of his. I absolutely loved when he was drafted into the league. I just want to get a little more numbers here on this actual Dolphins game, as of course we know it was just absolutely with points in this game. All right. Let's see. Raheem Mostert had 4 touchdowns. Devon Achane obviously went off as well. This was the fourth 70-plus point game in NFL history. The other 3 were the 40 Bears, which they had 73 in the NFL chip game. The 66 Washington team had 72, and the 50 Rams had 70. It was the second most yards ever in an NFL game with 726. Only the 1951 Rams. Clearly, they were doing big things there back in the 50s. They had 735. They're the first team in NFL history with 5 passing touchdowns and 5 rushing touchdowns in a game. They're the second team in NFL history with multiple players with 4 touchdowns in a game. The 2004 Chiefs were the other. They're the second team since at least 1940 with 300-plus yards rushing and passing in a single game. The 2012 Niners also did the same thing. They ran 71 plays and averaged a first down a play, 10.2 yards per play. The most yards per play by a team with 70-plus offensive plays ran since 1960. Second largest win in franchise history. They beat the Patriots 52-0 back in 1972. The first 50-point win in the NFL since 2014 when the Rams beat the Raiders 52-0. And the final score was one never before seen in the NFL. The Broncos scored more points Sunday than the Broncos have all season. Excuse me, the Dolphins scored more points Sunday, 70, than the Broncos have all year with 69. Miami has 1,651 yards of offense through 3 games, the most in NFL history. The Dolphins have scored 130 points through 3 games, which is tied for the second most by any team through 3 games in history. The 1968 Dallas Cowboys had 132. So it was just a bad day at the office, right? Like Sean Payton, the defense, absolutely horrible. Darby, what's good, man? Happy to see you in the chat. You tuned in at the right time because I'm dragging Sean Payton right now. Sean Payton coming in, thinking he can fix this with Russell Wilson. Obviously, the defense is a big issue, right? The offense isn't necessarily where they're falling short so much. But when you give up 70, it's going to be hard to run back into that and chase him down and actually get to a point where you can make it a competitive football game. Sean Payton's job is in question already. Sean Payton could possibly be gone by Thanksgiving. When you start 0-3, you blow an 18-point lead at home, you get a 70-piece complimentary 70 burger dropped on your head, you lose by 50. The Dolphins set every book in the record out there. The Dolphins set almost every offensive franchise record for Miami in that game. Sean Payton's job question. You thought it was easier with Russell Wilson. Clearly it's not. There's a lot more here to be fixed than you thought. And it sucks that you drag Nathaniel Hackett's name because, unfortunately, Sean, you might not even make it through the full first year that you're with the Denver Broncos.